All right. I think we left off yesterday with the jail. So, what do we want to do about the jail?
Okay, so obviously what we have in this spreadsheet, and well, three things, I guess. What you have in your spreadsheet, what we were given in the spreadsheet from Roger, and then what Roger and Brad sat down with, all three of those are different. So
We have to
I'm
assume,
not-
we have to assume that Rogers is different, though, because it's not broken down with people in it. And we can't, just us sitting here doing quick math, we couldn't make the math work.
So the math on, did you took your spreadsheet with the ones in blue or
Sorry. Yeah, so what I did, hang on, let me pull it up real quick. So everything that I sent you guys that is in blue is what I changed, so what is different from the prior year's salary schedule. So if I take all of those numbers and total that up for the whole year, I get, it was different from what we even calculated quickly yesterday. I get $992,804.02. And that is, now that's all the deputy jailers, that's all the cooks, that's all the office staff. Those are the ones that we reviewed on Friday. So he didn't mention anything about adding people or anything like that. That was basically who he had employed today. But to Erica's point, it may have been just him saying, well, that's what we were going to review for the day, and that wasn't an opportunity for him to ask, like, well, I want to add 4 more new people. That could be the difference in what he submitted and what is on that salary schedule.
But the salary schedule's more though.
No, the one that he presented is more, right?
Right.
It's over $1 million.
The item, the unitemized, well, I say unitemized, it's itemized, but the one without any information on what individuals are in that calculation and at what amount from him. It's
Okay,
more.
1.108.
Yes.
You're talking about with the, okay, so because this one that you have doesn't even have, doesn't have the maintenance.
No, that's
Or,
right.
yeah, okay.
Correct. That's only the ones that we reviewed Friday.
Okay.
And again, I don't know, I don't know if that was him saying, they just weren't on the list, so it wasn't anything that he was asking. It was basically getting everything to current, which is why I think it's less. I think that's the difference.
Well, I guess my question would be, for the sake of being able to move to the next one, get to the point to where we have this in a like a worst case scenario, or sort of worst case scenario, to be able to figure out tomorrow what to do with all those, or tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Could we plug in this number
To
to our working document and see?
the one in the
What it
the one
does?
on the salary schedule?
Yeah. Or do you think it's not accurate?
I mean, I think it's accurate to the point of what he's asking for his current staff, not above and beyond, not adding anybody. I think it's his current ask. So
And just so I'm clear, this FY '22 is current.
yes,
This is what they are currently making.
correct.
I don't think I have that.
Yeah, you do. It was an email from
Brad?
Brad. Yeah, it's that. Well, I mean, it should. What day was that, Brad?
Friday.
Yep, sorry.
Nope, you're good.
No, that's the salary schedule.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Yeah.
I thought you was looking at Roger's budget.
Well, I do have, I mean, I'm talking about his old document he presented. I'm looking at his document plus the salary schedule. I mean, I can just say, if we're needing to get to this point, that I can't see us making a decision on having a, what'd you call it, a traveling, or a, what'd you call it? What do you call the other type of jail?
Transport jail.
Transport, sorry, not traveling. I guess you want your prisoners
I mean,
traveling.
that's just a spectrum as far as, counties have no jails, they have transport. You have, in this case, as we discussed yesterday, we just focus on our own inmates. If we're gonna have an expense, let's make it just our expense.
But the difference,
I mean, as a taxpayer, when I realized that I am paying, and this is just me, I am paying for other communities' inmates. I mean, as an elected official, I'm not going to ask somebody else to do that. Those citizens in those communities, what should have happened last year's budget workshop is that $26 rate should have been increased, and it wasn't. I just think it is totally unfair to our citizens that pay their taxes, that we're going to sit there and take in other inmates, chasing a dollar, which actually is costing us $5, and put it on the backs of our citizens. I'm a citizen of this community, and I'm not going to do it to myself, and I'm not going to do it to the taxpayers. We have to do something. I mean, we can't continue to kick this can down the road. And when you look at the OTA, that's all we got. We keep putting more and more, as we've said it, the expense side of the house continues to go up, but we're not doing anything to bring revenue in or to reduce the expense side going up. Because once that OTA is depleted, right now we're very fortunate because we got 1.9 million, and that's I mean, if you keep, as a governing body, if we keep chipping away at what we have in reserves, eventually it's going to get to a point where there's not going to be enough revenue coming in because the expense side is too high and the reserves are depleted. And I'm really going to be, as a taxpayer, furious if I'm still paying for other counties' inmates. And, you know, this was discussed with Roger. There was no effort. And this last budget meeting that this court sat with him, he said, well, I think I've got to increase my rate for those inmates. That was it. There was no dollar amount. There was no, hey, I've done the study. I've looked at the numbers, and this is where we're losing money. I'm going to raise these rates. Because when he said that he has to be competitive, well, that doesn't make any sense when you look at the numbers. We're not being competitive to get inmates into our county jail. That's bringing in a revenue to pay off our expenses. And we don't even have the total cost of what it's costing the citizens. So what I just shared yesterday was the actual expense of an inmate in the jail. We still have over here the expenses of maintaining the asset, which is the facility, all the boilers and AC units or whatever else as an expense. That is borne on this community. And, you know, I don't know. Years ago, chasing inmates may have been a revenue. I don't know. But it's not today. And hearing from other county judges, my last judge executives board meeting, I sat with a judge who said that they got rid of their jail. Now, this was just their county. They got rid of their jail, and they actually saved money. But that's a common theme across the state. Other jails, there are successful jails, but the jailer is being creative. And we're talking all the way out in eastern Kentucky. I mean, there are some jails that don't have, counties that don't have the revenue like we do. So they're much smaller, but they're in a bigger issue in what their jail is causing them. It's kind of hard to compare. I think when there was a national study that we were reading, and was it 18%?
Yeah.
I think it was 18% is what we kind of looked at, just throwing some rough numbers as far as what the jail cost our budget. You know, we got to do something because if not, for the simple fact that our citizens are paying for that really gets in my.
I think we've got a lot of questions on the jail. I think it would be worthwhile to call Roger in.
Well, Roger sat right there.
Well,
year
he's not
after
sitting
year.
here today, or he
And-
wasn't yesterday. So
I don't know how many times we've discussed this, and Roger has been here, and this court has had him in front of us. We got tomorrow to do a first reading. So we're the managers of the purse.
Well, Erica alluded to yesterday, she didn't think his numbers would come in on state inmates as what he had indicated. I'd like to hear from him on that and these other issues. I know there's going to be a price increase on the inmates from other counties, and I would like to hear from him on this. So, it's my opinion.
As of today, because we've got till tomorrow to do a first reading, the more we want to kick this can down the road, we have to have a first and second reading.
So, yeah, we do. We get that. We know. I know.
It's frustrating when the man is sitting here.
He's not here while we're having a discussion. I'd like for him to be able to answer questions we have, and to answer some of the things that were thrown out, directed at the jail. That's only fair. I mean, that's the way to do this. So,
Okay,
So as far as the state versus our own inmates, I guess what you are looking for essentially is, okay, if we did not house any state or other counties inmates, correct? That's what you're looking for. What would that number be, cost to our taxpayers to pay that to another county? Correct? Because you're saying not take any, or, well, no, that's not necessarily the case, because some of these state inmates are our own counties' state inmates, correct?
the inmates, when you say state inmates, if the state's paying us now $35,
Yeah.
those inmates,
You're saying not accept those.
guys, right now, we've got to do something. I'm throwing options on the table.
But what is that? That's what I'm asking. What's that option?
What I'm
Not
saying
accept
is,
them?
If a jail is going to be an expense for our community, well then we know the other counties that we obviously have a $26 contract. The court needs to set an amount. If we're handing monies to this operation, it should be tagged with this rate of pay for any inmate coming from another county is at this amount. And it's at an amount that is going to cover our costs for that inmate. That's obviously, in my opinion, these other counties aren't going to pay it. They're going to go somewhere else. If we're at $26 right now, $26 doesn't even come close to our total cost for an inmate in our jail. So if we're going to have an expense, let's reduce the amount of inmates in our jail so that our expense is reduced. And, you have to look at the total cost in the jail. I mean, there's a lot of expenses that go into that operation.
Okay, back to I think yesterday we both agreed with each other, though, I think we did, on the fact that, though, that particular piece of it is one piece. It's not an enormous piece of the revenue pie, though. True? That just one particular piece that you're talking about on the revenue side.
The
which
other
is,
county inmates?
Yes.
Yes.
It's not. So it needs to be done. I don't disagree with you at all. I mean, I don't see that it shouldn't be any different than whatever we're getting for the state inmates. I mean, that makes sense to me, but, and I'd have to look and find these numbers as to how many days that is and what kind of difference that makes. But if I'm just looking at it on a percentage basis, if you're saying $26 versus 35, so that's 25%, somewhere in that neighborhood. increase and that revenue that we have budgeted is like $18,000. So I mean, it would add, it'd be negligible, you know, $5,000, $6,000, something like that to the bottom line. That's why I'm saying, are you also saying only house those state inmates that are from this county? Is that another solution to this?
I don't think, in looking at the breakdown that we did in 2021, let me find it. When you go through, you got state control intake and then Marsh County detention. Okay, these are the numbers. So state control intake is 123. This is the month of July 1st to the 31st of 2021. 123 state control intake inmates. Marsh County detention, we had 137 inmates. Total expenses just for the month of July in 2021 was $176,691.57. The cost per inmate per day was $33.60. So it didn't matter if it was a Marsh County detention inmate, and of that 137, if it was a state inmate from Marshall County, the state control intake, which was 123, or in this case, we had Lyon County and Graves County combined had 4 inmates. The cost per day for that month was $33.60. If you go to August, the total expenses was $186,548.96. The cost per inmate per day was $32.26. Now, this is based off of the charge rate per inmate. Other counties, it was $26. The state control intake was $31.34. We now know that that legislation has increased that to $35. And that's, state control intake was 131 inmates, and Marsh County detention was 150. You go to September, the following month, $182,417.88. Cost per inmate per day was $31.82. State control intake was 150. The county, Marsh County detention was 138. So these numbers obviously go up and down. I asked Brad to put these numbers together just so that we can get an idea of what our actual cost is to have an inmate in our detention center. And, you know, each inmate is different. Medical expenses can be different, you know. But our cost, this gives us a rough idea of what our cost is. This is on the expense side, right? Mm-hmm. We just took the expense side and put these numbers together.
It's the easiest way to do it tangibly. I mean, you know, we've talked about all the other things. I mean, something unforeseen happens, boilers, those sorts of things, then that doesn't account for that. Or it doesn't account for our time when we're, you know, managing their time clock or their payroll. This kind of intangible, you really can't put a dollar figure to it. So that's the best case scenario. I think it's worse.
So let me think through this.
Yep.
Here. So it's $31, $32, somewhere in that neighborhood. So, statutorily, I assume, I mean, if we we don't have a jail, like Lyon County, I guess, whatever. Then, and our charge from another county is higher than that, then are we not gonna end up being in a worse predicament?
Well, you're only going to look at those Marshall County inmates.
Yeah, so,
You know,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
and
But-
yes, you have to look at that,
So
but you
what-
also, so let's just look
Okay.
at the month of July. We have 137 inmates, local inmates, okay? Of that 137, and this is on the far end extreme of no county jail. We're a transport. A transport is basically a jailer with minimal staff. Let's say McCracken County. Now, I don't know what their rate is, but let's just say McCracken County's,
let's say it's $35, right? What is the state charging now?
Yeah, it's right in that.
So let's say they charge us $35. So if you took 2,133 days, because it's a charge per day per inmate, so that's how many days we housed Marshall County inmates in July. So take 2133 times 35, that would cost us $74,655. So that's what we would be charged by that.
and based off of that example, for the month of July, we would have saved $101,000.
Yes.
And we're not including the cost that would be saved that's not shown in these numbers.
Right.
The facility cost.
And our statutory requirement, I believe, and without reading it and going into the legal terms, you obviously have to have a jailer, and then provide that transportation to a facility that would accept the inmate. I mean, I know that's general and very simple, but I think that's pretty much what the bottom line is. I mean,
There's, when you look across the state, there's states that have, or counties that have literally a jailer with, well, I think I might even have a list. When Erica gets back, I'll ask her to pull it up, but there's discussions that have been going on throughout the state where it actually breaks down counties that don't have a jail, counties that do have a jail. There's even a regional jail concept that actually shows, the staff. Can you pull up your notes on, you had a spreadsheet of counties that didn't have a jail and they had a transport and how many staff they had?
So in that scenario, if we take, say, 75,000 a month, of course, we're having no revenue coming in. True. So this is all just a loss, or not loss, but this is cost, straight cost. So if you're taking 900,000 plus a jailer and plus whatever those transport costs are that we don't know
Right.
off the top of our head.
Right.
But you could take another, I don't know what it would be, 100,000?
a month or a year?
No, no, I mean
For the
a
year.
You're
Yeah,
also,
for gas and fuel and stuff.
you're also going to have the medical cost on those inmates. Because Graves County's paying the medical cost on the inmates
We
here.
have to pay,
Pay their medical
That-
costs at their facility? Is that right? I don't
I
know.
mean, if we're paying 26, if Graves County's paying $26 a day and we average our cost to be over $35, Graves County ain't paying nothing, in my opinion.
well, at that 20, I agree at $26. I don't, disagree with you there. I'm just looking at taking that scenario, how much does it truly save to the bottom line? And I think if you take a worst case scenario of, or if you take his scenario within this budget, it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of a break even. If you're looking at $1.1 million hit to us, essentially, right? I mean, I know on ours, because we lowered, we're looking at, is that income really going to be that much? It's more like 1.5, so it's a $400,000 difference between having one and not having one. You thinking, or you?
No.
No.
My mind's already made up. I mean, we are losing monies and just not making decisions. You're not, we can what if, obviously, if we looked at it as a transport. Worst case, we get rid of the jail. We're just a transport agency. We're at the mercy of the other jails that are in the area. I mean, we're now no different than Graves County, Lyon County, that don't have a jail. They're transport agencies. If you go back, what was it, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where Lyon County, when you had I think it was a state making arrests, lodging them at their facility, and it was, affecting their budget. I mean, there's always going to be those expenses for not having a jail. But looking at what we have currently, jails just don't make money. I mean, so we can't, we have to quit saying revenue. If we're not making money, then it's no revenue. The state's not paying enough for their inmates. I mean, the General Assembly did not help out the counties across the state. $35 is not going to cut it because they didn't take in consideration all the other expenses that are not on here. It really is. I mean, it is an issue across the state. Other counties are bailing out. Some counties are, as counties bail out, other counties are, growing. I had some judge executives saying, when you really make money, you get into the federal prison. I was like, that's not solving the problem, in my opinion. But
I will say, though, if I'm looking at it from a what's different now versus 5 years ago, it's not increased. It's not the increased expense. It is the loss of revenue in those state inmates.
well, 5 years ago, you have to remember, too, what was just laid out in front of us through our audit. Those practices locally cost us. So there's expenses that we're not putting to paper that actually is affecting us. This was done on the expense side. Brad took the expense side and put this together just for 2021. There is a management piece here. It's gonna cost us, there's unforeseen costs that are coming. It's gonna cost the community more. So that's one extreme, talking about a transport. The other one is, you know, looking at this, what is our expense if we focus just on our inmates? So each month, you know, 137 inmates in July, 150 in August. How successful, you know, what are our practices at the local level? And this is where the unfunded mandates come in. We have what agencies can make an arrest and lodge a inmate in our county jail, right? And what are their practices? Has anyone actually thought to look? Other communities, I mean, there were other communities that were looking at this very issue, 15 years ago, maybe even longer, in our area. But what are our practices, and can we mitigate certain violations to keep them out of our county jail because of the cost to the taxpayers? Those discussions, I think, need to be had. Do the judges really see or understand the constraint on our budget? Those types of practices, have they ever been discussed? I mean, there's so many areas that we can look at collectively to say, hey, let's tighten the belt up on our operations. Let's focus on something else. We got to try something, because just throwing money at this, when he sat down and asked for $1 million more, that's a problem. We don't have $1 million. That's just one department. We don't have $1 million to throw at that department. But I think having him in front of us over the past couple of budget workshops over the past couple of years, the court's going to have to make a decision. We don't have to make a major decision today, but looking at the numbers today collectively with all the departments that we either subsidize, which we practically subsidize all the departments, we got to at least put a Band-Aid on it. And you have to take in consideration, was it House Bill? Let's see if it's on there.
556 or whatever.
Yeah, that subsidy that we give for that operation, we're bringing that back in to our budget, and it's still with a $1 million request. I mean, that's.
You're saying the subsidy of $1 million. Is that what you're?
No, what was it, about 100 and what did that bring in? Under the 295 295,000,
You're asking what the House Bill 556 has
Yeah.
brought in to date?
was it 100 and?
I think we're right at 120, I believe.
120.
I've gotten this month's check.
No, I'm saying the $1 million that you just mentioned, the request.
Oh, he's talking about the subsidy.
Subsidy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the
Yeah,
subsidy's
that's all
always
I
been
asked.
around 400,000. The last year, the way the Band-Aid we put on that was we had CARES monies left over. That's how, you know, we covered it last year. But then, that money's gone now. Give it to the jail. I know while I was making copies, you had asked me to pull up some information. I don't know for sure what you need, but I have information on what other counties pay other jails. So, and that ranges from, you know, $45, 46, 48 is the highest, and down to 25 a day to one regional facility. That's the only person I saw doing that. You see, most of the ones I see are $35, $37 a day that counties pay the other rates for other counties that responded to this thread that we had. And then Judge had asked me to pull kind of what another county that did end up closing their jail in the last couple of months was compiling information. So she has shared that with me. That's what you see on the screen there, and
What's on the left?
That's
Those
the
are
county.
Counties that what?
that have closed jail. That responded, that have a closed jail.
Keep going down.
What their populations are, what the salary of the jailer is, what the court decided to set that at, because there's not a set amount on that when it's closed from the state. And then some of them responded with how many full-time people they had to have, how many part-time people they had to have for transport, what they paid. Some people responded that for the people, what the on-call rate was, and some responded on how many transports a year they had.
All right, so the only one that's really, I mean, not the only one, but I mean, the one that's closest to us is Anderson County at approximately 30,000 people.
Yes.
Do we know
And they
anything
did
about
not,
their?
they did not respond to the person who collected this information about how many transports they had. I believe that, were they the closest on the list? I believe that Judge had me reach out to someone. I'm going to assume it was Anderson because they were closest to us on the
Yeah.
list. That treasurer to ask if she knew how many transports a year they did and all that, and she didn't have that information.
Well, what I'd like to know from Anderson County then, I think what really makes the difference to us is, okay, what is their jail budget now? I mean, do we know when they closed it, Anderson County?
I don't, but I could try
Okay.
to find out some information for you.
I mean, I think that county being the closest to us, if it happened enough time ago that they have a legitimate budget now of how much that jail costs that county, that would be helpful to know.
Those are just those that respond. There's obviously other counties that have not responded.
Well, no, I
That are
thought you
doing
said
different
those
things.
are all the counties that,
Let's see. So there's a
That
few in here
closed, that have
they had
closed.
no information on at all. So Clinton, Cumberland is still Gerard, is that how you say that? Henry, Johnson. Yeah, I mean, so there's others that have closed jail that she, for some reason, ended up on her list that were closed that she had no information for at all.
who's she?
A lady who's on the board for Treasurers Association, who was
Okay.
gathering this information. For Union County. Union County chose to close their jail in the last couple of months.
Okay, so tell me again, this 48 county list is what?
Closed jails.
Closed jails.
Counties that either closed their jails already or have no, maybe they had no
Okay.
jails to begin with.
So it is the entire, there are, the numbers, if there are no numbers out beside it, it just means that those people didn't respond.
Did not respond.
But this is the number of closed jails, 48. counties.
I can verify that.
That either closed a jail or just don't have a jail, one of the
That's
two.
right. That is, yes, that's the information that I received from her, yes. I can verify that if you would like that information.
Yeah, you're going to have to verify that, because I know just in my association, when they ask for counties to respond, not all counties respond.
Yeah. So it could
So
be.
there is a variable there. But on her spreadsheet, just to get information, that's what she got, which is,
But I mean, it sounds about, I mean, that number would make sense to me. I mean, it's pushing 50% of the counties in the state.
well, let's look at our region. How many jails are in our region? And our region being, let's just take the purchase area.
Purchase, I mean, you got 1, 2. You have to count graves. I mean, I get that it's not there now, but it is. It was. It's a natural disaster.
Well, we were having inmates from graves before the disaster. So it's not, in terms of a jail compared to the size of ours, the intake, they only take in so many until they're full. But I would say, I would agree with you that they do have a jail.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And just in the purchase area, I mean, the biggest one is McCracken County.
Fulton's pretty good size.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And then you've got, they had these issues.
Callaway, Graves, Marshall. So you have 5. That's the only 5 I can think of. 5 out of. So I mean, again, it's probably that same percentage.
But, yeah, and in the penny
5 out
row,
of
I don't
12.
know. I don't know how many jails are in the penny row. But when you start looking at, as far as just the discussion of transport, other jails may be doing the same thing. They may be chasing the state inmates. I don't know. I mean, I will tell you that the state has a jail problem, and raising it to $35 is not solving it for us. And, it was interesting talking to another judge executive that is in central Kentucky, that they have the same, this is all across, I've talked to judges all the way over to the West Virginia, Kentucky state line. You have the Judicial Center, AOC, which are employed by the state. In some counties, we have no control. We can't tell AOC, or we can't go tell the judges, hey, we're not going to fund. We want you to do this. We don't have that control. But it is going to be an issue moving forward, if we don't get it under control now, because in our situation, we have a 30-year-old facility. We had the electrical issue that we had a couple of weeks ago. Just take that for an example. If there was a fire and we had to evacuate the inmates and the facility was not suitable, then overnight we could become, and that type of scenario could happen anywhere. But with our facility, it is an old facility. And like I said, I hate to use this analogy, but putting lipstick on a pig is not the best scenario moving forward. If you were saying you were coming up with 400,000 just off some rough numbers,
400,000 what now?
what were you saying about $400,000? I think.
Well, I'm saying
the difference.
the
off
difference
numbers.
in, let's say, the if we take the worst-case scenario of 1.5 versus if we didn't have a jail, what the cost would be based on that, say, $75,000 a day, plus, you're going to have some additional expense there. It's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.1 million versus,
Okay, say that, I'm sorry, because I missed that part of the, when you all were doing the math. So,
If you took, Erica, July 1st to 31st of 2021, take the 137 inmates at the rate for 2,133 days, it came up to what, 75,076?
Yeah.
And then when you
Did that, remember we did it for the.
subtract that from the total expense, I think that's roughly where he was coming up with his numbers. Because that number, as you go through this document, you'll see it changes, because obviously the inmates and the days change. But it gives you an idea.
I think there's a lot assumed in that logic, though, if you are going that route. So your thought is, what's the cost to house just our inmates, right?
yeah.
Well, so then if you're looking at the $35 a day, your assumption is that we're going to continue to have the staff that we have.
No, I'm not.
Shouldn't.
No, there's no,
Right, we
I'm not
shouldn't have
taking
that.
any of that. I'm saying, if we had to pay another county to house
Our inmates.
ours at that rate,
Right.
times the population that we had within that, it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 75,000 plus whatever transport and having a jailer. You know,
So 75,000, and that was a monthly cost,
a
right?
month, yeah.
And
So-
then, so then, say 5 to 6 deputies, a jailer, and then transportation costs. And it'd be hard on the transportation costs because we don't know if our inmates, we don't know if these 137 we had in July are the same, 116 of them were the same ones we had in June, and they would only had to have been transported one time to another jail. Does that make sense? Are they
They're
people
gonna
who,
have
are they
to-
people who are sitting there and staying in jail? And those people would only need to be transported one time.
If they have a court appearance here, they'll also have to be transported back here, back to the jail,
That is true.
wherever that may be.
But typically, I think that's from that jail to the court, back to that jail by that jailing facility. So like I think when we transport
that.
somebody to Fayette County, that's our jail transporting it to Fayette County and back. So that's our cost. Does that make sense?
One more time on that, please.
So like when we take one of our inmates to McCracken County one time and they're there, now it's McCracken County will take them from McCracken County to here for court back to McCracken County. Not
us
Marshall
going to
going
pick
to
'em
get
up
them
and
from the
bring 'em
jail.
back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I didn't even put that
Right.
I just threw $100,000 out there. I don't know what it would be. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I think it would be helpful to know something like Anderson County, which I don't think is 30,000 people based on what I'm looking at, but let's assume it is.
And what all did you want to know from there?
Well, I'm just saying, since closing, what do they pay? They still have a jail budget. They have to have some type of expense. I don't know what it would look like. I'm not seeing their budget online like ours. Unfortunately, most counties aren't as transparent as, I don't want to say not as transparent, but they don't put it online like ours and have the entire budget. And I don't see theirs online to where I could find a budget. So I think it would have to be something that we'd have to get from them. But I think that's the big question here is, if you're going to make a huge decision like that.
Well, again, it's a spectrum. Monty. The decision isn't going to be made today, that you just close the jail down and you do a transport. There's no way that,
I agree with you. There's a spectrum.
but we have to realize, and this means the judges need to understand, all the way down to the individual who's putting cuffs on somebody. It is affecting our budget. This is one of those unfunded mandates. We have 3 law enforcement agencies in the county, which none of them do we employ. They actually, the cities, when we talk about the unfunded mandates, we have a county jail. When a city, Calvert or Benton, arrests someone and takes them to the jail, we are covering that cost. We have to have a collective, dialogue to say, look, are there areas where we could actually keep them out of our jail? That's why we did the ankle monitoring. And, just looking at the numbers on the ankle monitoring, and I don't know if you can pull up the few dollars that we got, but I think it was 550 days is we kept inmates out. So use the 550 days at the rough calculation with the numbers that we had for July. I mean that was a small win, we have to be creative. I saw this in McCracken County as a police officer. They had to make decisions, and they did. But didn't solve all their problems. But it affected all the way down to the boots on the ground, so to speak. But and that's a question is, are we actually doing that? Are the agencies working together? Do they understand? Do they even look at these numbers? I know I was talking with Judge Jameson about the ankle monitoring, and just the numbers that I saw. I mean, it was good. It was good for them because you take somebody that has to pay restitution. Well, if we got them lodged in our jail, he or she ain't working, so it's hard to make restitution when you're lodged. Anderson County's 928,000. 2 years ago.
I follow your logic though, Monty, as far as you're saying that would be our subsidy either way, like close to $1 million. $1 million. But I think that only holds true until we get in the situation we're in now where we have capital outlays that need to be done to keep that building livable, because that people live in it. That's what it is. So, to your point, I agree. I think that we'd be close to that subsidy to have a transport jail, just doing quick math. But, again, we'll have capital outlays, and that's only going to get worse. It's an old building. It's also, you got to think we're not talking about all the utilities and all of that stuff. When you look at that, their utilities aren't in this budget, and I just had Corey pull it. I mean, they're at like $280,000 for the year right now in utilities. And that's not their cable bill and their cell phone, or their phone bills. That's not unemployment insurance. That's not insuring that building and its contents. All the things we talked about, it wasn't yesterday. It's not the portion of administrative costs or maintenance costs or IT costs or anything like that. Which some of those are sunk costs. We wouldn't get those back anyway. We'd still have maintenance. We'd still have IT if the jail closed. However, maybe the demand on those departments would be less, and down the road, maybe the workforce demands would be less on those. But I think we'd see an immediate change if you went down to a transport jail and things like unemployment. However, back to the other side of that, again, they're a big budget, a big department, and they're a big chunk probably of that 500,000 we were talking about, of vacation and comp time payouts. So if the jail closed and you had people to lay off, we'd have payouts for all of that. In the first year, it'd be probably pretty expensive. But I don't think you're ever going to, I think because of the way that the working practices are, you're never going to get out from under that. So that'd be a decision, even if you did that 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, I think that people would still have high accumulated balances because that's how it has been.
Although I understand what you're saying, that there's a spectrum there. There's a lot in between what we have and that. I don't know what that happy medium is in between those two. That's the issue. Because both of those two cost a good amount of money, not necessarily equal, but somewhat. I think we can agree is it's not that far off. But I don't know what that magic bullet is to get it back to the $500,000 something. That's the other thing is, what are we comfortable with knowing is going to be an ongoing subsidy? Don't we have to know that?
I think the court's going to find out what the real subsidy is. And again, you can just look at the expense side. What's the total amount of overtime hours?
They're working?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, when we looked at it,
Why am I thinking 100?
yeah, I mean, it was
Averaging 100.
It was a lot. And Roger and I had talked about that. Part of it is previously, before they fell under our admin code, when they worked a holiday, it was kind of, they took it off later. Well, falling under our admin code, they get time and a half, any hours worked on those holidays. So that's significantly going to, and you can't get away from that. That's any 24-hour operation if that's the way it's written in our admin code. But the other part of that is, what weren't those hours, and could he have a pool of people that he can call and bring in and try to mitigate some of those overtime hours?
Like what we thought was going to happen with 911 when he said Aaron didn't
Yes.
know.
Right.
But it said it's not work. I mean, it's not.
I think,
Right.
I don't think that's
That's
been
not
an
working.
initiative that's been pushed. So,
Well, I don't think the initiative that we allowed to be put in place, or whatever you want to say, for several months ago, has that pool that we thought that we could have.
right.
To get folks coming from other 911 centers to help out and not have overtime. It hasn't
They've
played out, has
Oh.
it?
Well, you're talking about 911?
Yeah, I'm just saying,
In that,
the only scenario that we have that we could go back to say, have we seen that work in our own county? That's the one place that we have tried it, correct?
I don't think you can, I don't think that's a comparison.
well, until Friday, I hadn't really talked to Roger about doing that. I mean, it was kind of one of those things. I said, well, how many of those overtime hours could be mitigated by, like, when somebody leaves, they may go to another jail and work a day shift. Well, obviously, there's night shifts available at our jail, so it could be something that they want to supplement their income by getting a call in. And he's like, oh, okay, I didn't really think about that. So kind of if you get into that practice and change that environment to where people start thinking that way, then it may take a bit, but then you could build that pull up and then get rid of some of that overtime. So I think it's just it's a change in mindset that I don't think that has been thought through until now. And I think he's thinking about it a lot more now because of those holiday hours that there's no way to, unless you change the admin code to say something different, that you're not going to get rid of. Whether they're part-time or full-time, those are always going to be time and a half on holidays.
And then kind of to further muddy it, like Judge was talking about, if we could cut down on our
Yeah,
own
let's
county,
do that.
our own
Let's
county inmates.
further muddy.
If we could cut down on our own county inmates with the utilization of the ankle monitoring when it's appropriate, and if it's costing them $15 a day, but it costs us 35, which is really not the case, let's say 40, to house them, or even to transport them to another place and house them, 35, 40, that's a big difference. Maybe we should pay in some circumstances to let somebody be on an ankle monitoring to keep them out of costing us the $35 a day. If they meet certain income requirements or need requirements or something like that. So then you might take that 120 a month that we have to house in the neighbor jail down to 75 a month or something like that. But like Judge said, that's not on us. There's so many agencies' hands are on the decision for somebody to be on an ankle monitor.
I think where we're at is you have to make sure that the operations are as efficient as possible to get a real number. We have a lot of room in some of our agencies to improve. As Erica was saying, some of these agencies don't even fall under us. But if we're giving subsidies out, we have to have strings attached to those subsidies, because if we just give the monies out and turn away and not really pay attention to each year, it keeps going up, going up. I mean, eventually, we're not going to have any monies to give out, and the only place we get our monies is taxpayers' purse. And we have to make sure that the operations are running as efficient as they can be. And that's just outside of the actual expenses on the facilities and all the unforeseen, things that we have to deal with. When we got ALC's payment, and it was $147,000 for the construction of a new facility, that just brought to light how for 30 years with this jail facility, and it's the whole facility down there is just, it's old. And it's expensive because it's old facility and you just throw money at it. But then when you look at the operations, and that's what we're trying to look at here, is both the operation side of it. Can we make it more streamlined? You know, we can sit here and talk about it, but all we have control of is the money. We don't run the jail. But I think we need to be, we spent quite a bit of time on this morning.
You have your mouse on that for a reason.
Oh, no, it just happened to land the food.
I mean, I asked that, but I mean, look at it. Is it a spot where we're budgeting more than it is actually costing?
I guess it could potentially be, depending on the capacity of the jail, how full it is. But, I mean, even if we cut it by 100 grand,
I'm not
it is
saying
great,
that.
100 grand's great, but there's still
Well,
a million.
if we
you
gotta
know.
do something to get to the next page of this, I don't know.
And I don't know
to do.
what Roger,
I mean,
what Roger would say about it. Clearly, has it set at 300 grand again, but, again, I don't know enough about his operations to know. Maybe towards the end of the year is when he buys a ton of perishables, or non-perishables that he can keep in his pantry. I don't know. Maybe we'll see a big uptick at the end of the year. Have we gotten any quotes back on wasn't there somebody who was gonna check out the heating and air situation there? And get us
The boiler,
quotes back?
I thought he was getting with an engineer.
there was an email, but I don't know if there was a dollar amount.
Okay, so there's not that I see, there's not any, estimates in here. It's just the.
So that's the engineering and the architect's proposal. But they didn't put their proposal cost on it.
No, it's just like the agreement of what their responsibilities are and how they would bill and all of that. I didn't see an amount.
I'm sure it's gonna be. I'll wait till Brad gets back and, but I believe that we sent over, no, that was I think that was the sheriff's department, but the way they got the electrical stuff set up is there's 3 different breakers in 3 different locations, but I want to say the boiler was estimated over $200,000, maybe 275. I don't know why that number's sticking out to me. I'll ask Brad when he gets back. But then you throw in the engineer and architect design and costs.
I believe that you're right, 250 or 300,000 per boiler, and there are three, correct, that need to be replaced. I'm skimming the email that was attached to this contract, and I don't think they needed to come back out and make another site review, I guess, in order to give an amount. So I'm assuming that hasn't been done since this was on Thursday. And today is Tuesday, Wednesday.
Says they would need a pre-bid meeting also. For contractors to actually come do site review before giving a bid.
Remember what the estimated cost for the boiler is?
Oh. If you're talking about, you gotta bid it, then yes. I mean, it was like, it was over $100,000, something, I was shocked how much it was.
Who was that from?
Who was up there?
I don't remember. I remember seeing a document. Let me see if I have something in my inbox. And I know so little about the mechanics of that building, about the boilers and how they.
But what do y'all want to do? We're an hour into this, hour and a half.
I don't have any more clarity than I did when actually, it's an hour and a half today, but it was probably an hour yesterday, so it's 2.5 hours later. I don't know that I have any more clarity than I did when we started this, to be honest with you, but I would certainly like to see us move to the next one and the next one before we leave today so that I can see the numbers to know what we do all day tomorrow. But I mean, right now, what are you using? What's your, as far as the subsidy?
So right now, it's based on the people who were employed that day at the rate they were employed at. And then everything else set to last year's budget in his. That's the printout that you have as far as from me on the appropriation side. That subsidy would be right at $1.2 million, $1,199,000. $1,445 to make that budget balance.
Are you using the numbers he presented on his receipt side?
No, I'm using the ones that you all agreed, that we sat and agreed to the very first day. So no, I have not changed to anything that he's presented.
You're talking about when we had the budget workshop with the department heads.
Right, the first budget workshop that we had together. When
Yeah, we
went
just went
through
through all
and
the
said,
receipts and.
are these receipts reasonable, yes or
Gotcha.
no?
Gotcha.
So they're set at those.
I mean, again, reasonable knowing, yeah. At that point before getting to,
Well, and that's the problem. And I'm not calling you out, but it's what we think is reasonable. And then we dive into it and we're just like, whoa, wait a minute. Then, we start changing on the receipt side. And apparently it's not reasonable, and we've got to, if we can't control that, then the rest of it moving forward is not going to be able to be controlled. We as a collective body have to agree what we feel is reasonable, knowing what the outcome is going to be.
okay,
And, so setting that collectively as a court, we did that for everybody, but now all of a sudden,
but
we're not getting anywhere.
that being said, you and I we've disagreed on this for 4 budget terms now. Not disagree, but you know what I'm saying. I mean,
But it's not getting any better.
but
It's not.
there
getting
is a
any better.
difference though in realistically setting it and being conservative to the point to where you're cutting services based on that. I think, again, I feel like each one of those times when it comes to OTA,
Well, I would agree with you, but if you go back and let's just look at the agency that we were just spent a lot of time talking about. There's a whole lot of other information that was explained to us and shown to us as far as the operational side of it that affected our purse that we are responsible for. So when we set something reasonable, I've been here long enough and you've been here long enough to know that if I don't think it's reasonable, I'm going to say something. But at that amount, to me, that threshold is reasonable for me. To go any further, we're really not doing, I want to say this right, we have to get these individuals who are responsible for managing the operations to understand that we're not going to continue just throwing money at their operations until we see changes on their end that they are in direct control of. And there is part of that here that unfortunately we don't have a direct impact other than the money that we hand out. And as we go through this budget, if we're handing out the monies that are going to ultimately fall back on us, we should be saying, and this is what we're comfortable with in the operations, or this needs to improve. Why are we, we got a sucking chest wound here and we're putting a Band-Aid on it. You see what I'm saying? We as a court, we're at that point, we've been at that point where that has to take place, and we can balance a budget, but if we don't maintain it throughout, it's going to show up each year when we go into balance a budget. And we do have a lot of factors involved. We just can't, I know it's cliche, we just can't keep kicking that can down the road. We have to be realistic and look at how much money we're giving to this operation and is it working? You know, and it's not working. I mean, there has to be changes on the on the other end, and it puts us in the position that we're in right now. The way I could have said that is if we hand out a subsidy, we should be handing out instructions with that subsidy too.
I understand
And
where you're coming from.
What's frustrating is in other departments, they are managing. We have other departments that are doing what we have asked them to do. But then we have some departments, some agencies, that it's not so. And if we're going to be consistent, we need to be consistent with everybody.
Roger did say, I was just, got a message from him. He said there was a talk approximate $250,000, and I'm assuming that's for all of them. He does too. So I don't think it was actually something that was written or anything like that. It was just hey, what would it be if we replaced them? So I think he's assuming that it's all of them.
All three.
Yeah.
Does that
I would hope
include-
so. I would hope so. It's everything. I don't know. Like I said, he didn't get it actually a written quote. I can request him he do that.
Well, that's what he's supposed to be doing.
I thought that was the intent too. I thought there was like, go get an engineer and get a written estimate. I think that's what we need. I mean, you're gonna need that. We got a letter from, and I think everybody saw this back in 2021, stating that the boilers were unsafe to operate from ICI Mechanical out of Paducah. They had sent a letter.
I was trying to remember while you
Yeah,
were
it's-
gone.
It's this one, yeah.
I couldn't remember what organization. We got, I mean, I don't know how else to say it. We've got to make some major decisions with this facility and operations. Uh, Before it gets worse. If that letter, I mean, just like the electrical issue that we had a couple weeks ago, you know, housing inmates and having that type of an issue with a old facility, and then you've got this letter supporting that these boilers, I mean, it's just, we gotta do something.
What's the jail's receipts to date?
Let's see.
You've got that up through April 31, right?
March 31st. That was the thing I could get the quickest.
No, that's expenses. You have receipts through, it says April 30, 22. Is that,
I
It
believe
says
that's right.
expenses, but
Here,
it's
I'll pull up what
receipts.
we're actually at right now.
okay.
Is it 1.3 million?
1.3. And we had one.
That's without considering any, occupational subsidy, like just what he's brought in, no subsidy.
We had budgeted $1,150,000. And what was that number again, exact? I'm sorry.
1,349,000. And that includes that includes the House bill money, the House Bill 556 money, the 100,000 that has since been moved back in to repay our subsidy with that budget amendment we did. We put it into those capital reserves. So if you take that out, then it's, 1,248,000. I know we'll be wrapping up the day soon. Is there something that I can get for you all or put together for you that would help you that you want to look at this afternoon after we're closed for the day? And that way you've got this afternoon to look at. Is there anything I can get for you?
Specific to the jail,
Or anything?
I think I feel substantially more knowledgeable about the. I just don't know what you cut. I don't know what you cut to get to. Again, I would, and I know we're not going to do it, but I mean, we talked about it yesterday. The percentage of the subsidy, for these departments. I wish there was a magic, or a guide to go by that said this is what your subsidy. You should be comfortable with this. Not every department has revenue
Right.
that they're bringing in. And some of these departments, we understand that, and we have to, and we're comfortable with the fact that it costs us more than it brings in.
I think
We're
that-
never going to get to the point, are we? I mean, do you really think that we could ever get to the point where we're not going to use OTA at all? How do you do that?
No, I don't know. If you're looking at me, or I don't know if you're asking me, but
I'll
it's
ask
hard.
you.
It's hard to give you a number that says, oh, this is about what you should give to each department, because you're right, not all of them bring in money. I had suggested at some point that we do a kind of a priorities deal. So what's your what are your voters telling you they want to see? Do they want to see a jail? Do they want to see more roads worked on? Do they want to see more water or whatever? And so that we start from that priority, but instead of kind of every year, it seems like we're more like, I think about that National Lampoons where Chevy Chase puts his bubble gum on the dam that's sprouting water. I feel like that's kind of what we're doing. So
Well,
I don't know.
look at where we're at right now. 826,000. We're not balanced yet. 826,000. So far, what we've done is going through the wants and list or needs list. We put into the budget needs and wants and we haven't made it all the way through the budget. And like I said, 826,000, when we get through this, at the end, we're either gonna have to take out what we put in, or we're gonna have to take from what we have available. We can continue to do that, and eventually what we have available is gonna be zero, or not enough. And that is our revenue stream. The infrastructure in this county, I don't know, year after year I've said this, it is dilapidated. There's no other way to look at it. It's old. We talked about the facilities we own that fall under the fiscal court. I mean, we have to, I think 6, 7 years ago, what was the term? Bring energy efficient. This is 6, maybe 7 years ago. $6 million. But that doesn't fix the problem. And kind of what you're saying, Eric, I can tell you, roads, all of us have had the phone calls about roads. The services that we get tax monies for to provide that service. The state, the gas tax dropped. There's just, the state's not going to come in with the amount of monies for us to really take care of our roads. But we'll take whatever we can get from them. But our roads, it's a constant maintain of our roads. I mean, there's an expense. Obviously, that's a priority. But that OTA is what we rely on heavily. And we have to start looking at these operations and how they're managed, in my opinion. We're doing it in-house. We've tightened the belt on the agencies that fall directly under us. All right. Back to the jail fund. What do we want to do? What's been presented? We know we have a pending expense with the boiler. That's a known issue, but we don't have the dollar amount in front of us. We have a rough idea. So if we're sitting at 826, and you said things combined, it's 200, 250. We're over $1 million.
I mean, we're not going to this transport today. We're not doing it. I mean, we're not going to the other end of the spectrum. So I guess what is
That's not, I just want to make sure, that's not the go. The go is to lay everything out on the table. There's no way that I would expect this court to make that decision today. But you have to look at other counties. I mean, I know you guys have talked to other commissioners. Judges are talking about it. Counties are making these decisions. They've been making these decisions, and you've got a spectrum. Some fall on the far end to the left, some fall on the far end to the right, some stay in the middle. But for us, looking at our budget, this is organic to us. What do we want to do about the jail? I mean, that's the simple question.
But, okay, so that being said, I mean, we're obviously the biggest expense of all in this jail is employees,
Payroll, right.
payroll. There is a certain point, though, at this time, because we cannot, I don't know the answers to the questions that you're asking about the three other entities or the three entities, the cities, 2 cities in the county. I don't know the answer to that. Nor do I think that we're going to get a resolution between now and June 30th either as to, I mean, I don't know that that's an issue that can be resolved between now and.
If anything, I mean, this isn't something that just popped in our faces today. This is, it's going to take time for that to evolve to that level. But we have to be thinking of that. Because that is how the process works. When we're talking about the jail, just a simple question: what are the ways for an inmate to end up in our jail?
That's a simple question. What are you looking for?
An answer? I mean, to understand.
I mean, they're arrested, but how, you mean,
Okay.
do you want me to?
Well, I'm just saying, we need to understand how inmates end up in our jail. They obviously they get arrested.
Yeah. I know.
I'm telling you what do y'all want to do about the jail?
But,
Anything?
So let's talk about it. From an HR standpoint, do we actually know, based on the inmates that we have right now, assuming that stays the same? Last year, when I called around to a couple of the counties, they had more deputy jailers than we did. They had more staff than we did. Their subsidy was worse than ours locally. So I guess my question would be back: do we know what you could cut and make a difference?
This is a conversation we have had, and it's hard to say, oh, if the jail had this many people, this is what it would operate at cost-wise, because that's not something that is in our wheelhouse. What's his minimum staff to inmate ratio, and how do his
Yeah. I feel like that's why
things
we have the
run
overtime, isn't it? Or no?
I'm going to tell you, I'm a little frustrated because when you smirk like that, and you've done it before, my patience with this issue, this is serious, and that type of stuff, I'm not going to sit here and take.
What are you referring to?
So, you guys know what the budget is. Let's make a decision, because we waste a lot of time on this.
I know Justin stepped out, but if there's a way to, because I know that you guys are agreeing you can't decide in the next 20 minutes about what to do with the jail. If we could run through the other ones, at least just briefly, and that way if there's any information somebody needs me more in-depth information they need to provide, I have the rest of the day to get that. If that's okay.
Good luck.
Should we wait for him to see? He may say he's coming right back up. I wonder if he brought his phone with him.
Probably sitting over there.
I'd almost say that the occupational tax side of the expenses, that's just refunds. I don't know if you guys want to change that. We kind of leave that the same every year. There's not much in that. Same for the animal shelter. It's an in and out. What they have is what they have. The sheriff, of course, is a big department. We'd have to come back to that one. ABC, it's set at what the receipt side is already set at what the sheriff recommended. And the expense side hasn't changed. It's the same as it is every year. It's a portion of my pay to do the books. So then that leaves building inspection, sheriff, and 911 of ones that we probably need to run through if we can.
The ABC you said was at hit, I thought he said
The receipts are
285.
set at what, he said I think he said 295, right? And
Oh, you're
they're-
talking about with the, I got you.
Yeah,
the-
and they're set at 298, and he said 295, so it's,
Fees and license.
right.
All right.
So if you guys don't mind to skim through those departments and see just off the bat if you know of something you want me to get you by the end of the day.
So as it relates to the sheriffs, what you have in here is last year's.
Right. Last year's budget, except for this year's, where somebody, same thing, with the people
pay.
who were employed that day at the rate they were employed at that day. And with a certain set number of hours, not excessive overtime, what we have budgeted for overtime, and that's it.
And his request was 1.1 million
Let me see.
increase.
It's year over year, this document is 1 point, or just over a million, whatever. Is that what you're talking about? 1,037,000?
I did the same with the sheriff, put a budget together, him and Roger, I actually put the budget together based off their revenue. So I want to make sure I'm looking at the right one that he turned in. Yeah, he turned in one, 4,988,950.
This one?
Is that what you got? Yeah.
That's not the one that you requested. That's not the revenue.
That's what he turned in.
That is,
What I had him and Roger do was to build a budget out statutorily and payroll for the revenue that they bring in.
okay.
So I just wanted to make sure I look at this one that he actually brought. And just looking at this, if you look at 5910, the grant with the state, that cost is about $1 million. I think it's 1.1 million. You'll see he's got 550,000. That's 550,000 coming out of our pocket. The courts going after the state grant and bringing monies back to the community, that total cost is 1.1 million. Talking with KOHS, the grant that was approved for 79,000, I think the total was 84,000. When we met with them, and you start looking, because you're talking federal dollars and state dollars, when you start looking at the actual budget table, breaking down that $84,000 is problematic on their end. So we asked them if that scope of work could be just for radios, and they said absolutely.
That's KLHS.
Yes, and the Quick Committee has already approved that. Obviously, there's difference of opinions, but the opinion is from the Quick Committee itself that has notified us that every radio has to be evaluated. And if they deny, then you can't get grant monies. So in this case, that 84,000 can go towards radios. So there's a match, if we were to be approved for 1.1 million, the match is about 200, a little over 200,000. Now that's if we were approved for the 1.1 million. If it was 500,000, obviously, I think it's a 10% match. We'd have to cover that. So depending on the $1.9 million that we have, by tomorrow we'll find out if there's matching dollars for that. But that provides the infrastructure for all the agencies.
What'd you say that match? It must be a 20 if you said 200. Didn't you say 200?
I did, so yeah, it's 20.
Okay, 20%. So 220.
Yeah. Yeah, so the total estimated cost is $1,172,069. Jumping ahead to the building inspection, I'm just going to tell you what my recommendation is. We've looked at this. The contracts have to be adjusted, in my opinion. Casey has to be, we've got to, he's going to be testing for level 3. We have got to compensate him. He's done absolutely a phenomenal job to get all that testing done. Obviously, he needs level 3, or his goal is to get to level 3. But with the contracts that we have with the inspectors, we feel that needs to change. Originally, I was thinking 6931, but if we're going to compensate Casey, I can't remember if we dropped that 6931 or increased to 31.
No, we didn't really have a method to do that, knowing what percentage of inspections he would take on,
Yeah, if
and then how he would be compensated.
yeah, and that's really the key. If he's going to have the certification, then we could. We're already. We've got 10 hours with Randy that we can move over to the inspection side. And one thing about the building permits is that they can advertise and make it known that this particular time of the day is when the office will be available to drop off designs or to make phone calls or whatever, because that's one of the biggest things with that department is you got IT or GIS and those functions along with building inspection. He's doing more of the office work, and it's inconsistent. People just call, come in, it's totally inconsistent. So some communities, they actually have office hours dedicated specifically for bringing in design work or, requesting permits, things of that nature. So that's an option to move her over to that responsibility. But then I think we need to look at having him do some of the inspections. He is going to be capable. He'll be licensed to. Obviously, there's an element of experience in doing it, but I think he's smart. He can pick up on that. If we don't compensate him to some degree, his level of classification, he can go, he's now marketable to leave us and go somewhere else. I'm not saying he's doing that, but that's obviously what we want is the employees to get certified and make themselves more successful. It betters our operations as a whole. So, but and I think we moved 100%. Regarding his pay, or was it a portion? I can't remember.
As of right now, he's 100% paid by GIS as far as the way he is coded, and then we in the current budget we've budgeted to recoup as much as his cost from them as their budget could handle. And so, in the current year, 2022, that amount was budgeted to be $27,300, and I believe his cost is something like $90,000 total cost. Before I move that money, I'll make sure that their budget can handle it. And if not, I'll come to you all and we'll see how much you want to move. But as of right now, but we're budgeted to move by the end of the year $27,300 back in to pay us back for a portion of Casey.
And the new one would be,
The new one is just
Double
it's gonna
that.
depend on what you set the receipts at. Right now, I have it balanced, with these receipts, which were the ones I believe that Casey came to us with. With recouping 58,000 of his pay. And leaving them with no reserves. So in the current year, they were left with some reserves, but the way it's balanced in the papers you have handed out, no reserve.
just so I know what you're talking about, so that I know I'm clear here, the contract that you're talking about would be the electrical. Judge?
Both.
The other one is not, so you're saying take Randy's to a percentage?
That's just my recommendation.
Okay.
Yes.
And you said
I think,
6931, is that what you?
yeah, and because it's,
That was a super rough.
yes.
I just want to put that out there again.
There's some
That was a super rough
flexibility there,
calculation.
but I think to get more into the details, it's going to fall under personnel. And I don't know how we have that, but other than,
Are you talking about because of Casey's split also, or are you talking about individual? You're talking about individual.
both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we meet as a court obviously after we get the first reading done, I don't think changing, we'll go into executive session, but I don't think if we do make changes, it's not going to substantially change the ordinance. So I'm comfortable with us discussing that at the next fiscal court meeting and executive session. But it does warrant to have that discussion. So we can come up with a starting point for the budget for the first reading. And if we make an adjustment, then I don't see that particular section of a $16.5 million budget substantially changing it.
Understood. You gonna use the suggested amount from the sheriff on fee pooling, or do we use what we?
The printouts you have right now is what we sat and agreed on. However,
I
if
know
you
that.
want to change it, I can. It's at 1.8 right now. Monty's question was, the sheriff's fee
his
pooling
suggestion?
receipt, right?
Well, no, I think, I'm saying that email that you sent forwarded maybe yesterday, or was it, when was it?
Yeah, maybe,
Or was it
maybe
over the
a
weekend?
few
I don't
days ago,
remember.
over the weekend, maybe.
What was that figure?
2.1 is what the sheriff's recommendation for the fee pooling revenue should be, and it's set at 1.8 right now.
My thoughts on that, if it's going up to 2.1 and we budgeted 1.8, we should take the difference in subsidy and keep. Because obviously, we're not balanced yet. We need to find monies. And I think handing out monies, we can pull back some of those monies we've been handing out. 11, so I've got to get on the road. What time are we slated for meeting tomorrow?